Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. It is me, Parker, and today I will be doing a little special video on dive bombers and torpedo bombers I would like to see in the British tech tree. As you all probably know, Britain is severely lacking in dive bombers, torpedo bombers, or any bombers in general, and anything except Spitfires, because Skygen thinks the only aircraft that the British fielded were Spitfires, apparently. And so I just want to sort of, these aren't things I would like to see, not like to see, but something that's it can beef up the tech tree basically. You know, add a few, then once things get going, add a lot. You know, add the best and then add the odd bits and pieces. You know the drill. So we're gonna go into 3 tiers, I think. Hold on, let me look at my thing. So it's two. Yeah, actually, no, it's 2 tiers. We're gonna go into 2 tiers, and those aircraft are the Blackburn Baffin, the Vickers Vildebeest, the Blackburn Shark, the Fairey Albacore, the Blackburn Skua, the Fairey Barracuda, and the Blackburn Botha. They are the dive bombers and torpedo bombers. I will do a separate video on actual bombers, like level bombers and all that. And I'll be going into tier by tier in that video, but because there's not many in this one, I will be doing it all in one video. The dive bombers, torpedo bombers, you name it. So let's begin. At tier 1, the Blackburn Baffin. The Blackburn Baffin was a biplane torpedo bomber that was introduced in 1934 and was retired in 1941. It could carry 1,600 pounds of bombs on an 18-inch torpedo. The bomb's loadout could be a single 2,000-pound bomb, even though it can carry 1,600-pound bombs. It can carry a single 2,000-pound bomb, 3 530-pound bombs, or 6 250-pound bombs. It had one .303 fixed forward-facing machine gun and a rear-mounted .303 machine gun for defense. It was very slow, 219 km per hour, just faster than the TB3, and had a slightly slower climb rate of 3 meters per second, or 9.8 feet per second. The only version I could possibly think of that could be implemented is the Shark Mark 1, so no other versions could be put in. The history of it, there really isn't much history. It was in service for 2 years before being replaced by the Swordfish. That actually saw service during the war a lot, and yeah, it was just provided as a recce aircraft, reconnaissance, and it was placed on HMS Furious, HMS Eagle, and HMS Glorious. And yeah, with its high bomb load at tier 1, I believe the aircraft could be the joy of many, and to be honest, effortlessly hunt down and destroyed in a ball of fury and flame. And that is a Blackburn Baffin. I do have the Handley Page HP.31 Harrow, but I don't have any words in that because I'm an idiot, forgot to do that. So we're going to go straight into Vickers Vildebeest. The Vickers Vildebeest was introduced in 1933. I actually have quite a word on this, no? Was introduced in 1933 and was retired in 1942 for obvious reasons, because it's a fucking biplane. It could carry 1,100 pounds of bombs on an 18-inch torpedo. It had one .303 forward-based machine gun and a rare .303. You know. It was very slow at 225 km per hour and just better than the one before at 3.2 meters per second climb rate, or 10.5 feet per second. So yeah, if it's going to be caught, it's going to be killed very easily if it hasn't got any defense. There can actually be a few versions of this in the game. The Vildebeest Mark 1, the original built after the prototype. The Mark 3, which had a newer engine, so it was very slightly faster and had 2 men crewing it. Sorry, it had 3 men crewing it instead of 3. It had foldable wings and was able to carry drop tanks, so it could obviously go much further. So, you know, Pacific, I think. Yeah, this was in Pacific. Drop tanks, easy, because Pacific is massive, it's fucking huge. So of course we're going to drop that tanks. There is a possibility to have a Mark 4 as well. It had 2 crew instead of the 3 for the Mark 3, and had a better engine and was faster. The last version I could think of was the Vickers Valiant, which is, for all intents and purposes, is exactly the same, except it didn't have the same badass name, but it is still pretty badass in its own right. It had a much better engine, the Pegasus 3M3 engine, so it was faster. All in all, 3 versions with a possible 4. So we have that. The Vildebeest, to be honest, had a very bad operational history. It wasn't because it was bad aircraft. I'll just put that down. It was not because it was bad aircraft. It was because of the year and era that it was fighting in. It's a biplane. It's a very slow biplane. It's fighting in the Pacific against Japan. You know how slow aircraft, unmaneuverable, slow crime weight aircraft did against Zeros. But very slow. It was crewed out by Japanese fighters during the invasion of Malaya. The 2 squadrons from Singapore were flown to Malaya to attack the Japanese landings. Despite being escorted by 11, they were shot down by 11 F-2As, I think. I can't remember it. All it says is 11, but fuck, I need to write more. They were withdrawn to Java, where the Japanese invaded Renbang. They attacked Japanese ships. Despite even more losses, they actually claimed 8 Japanese ships. So you can call it a victory, but you can call it a loss, whatever. So it wasn't an awful defeat, but it was still. It was also used to bomb Italian forces during the African campaign, and one even attacked the Italian submarine Galileo Galilei, and that's just about it. I'm pretty sure there are more. All of this is basically off Wikipedia, and I did some more research to make sure that it's true, and references were good, and they are. But yeah, I'm too fucking lazy to go anywhere else but Wikipedia. Okay, next one, a third one, or fourth one if you count, whatever. But Blackburn Shark. The Blackburn Shark was a carrier-based biplane torpedo bomber introduced in 1934 and was retired in 1945. And it's just amazing on how these biplanes survived for so long. Because I would have thought that they would have been completely nutty destroyed in like the first few seconds. Then British ministry would go, get them out, we're dying too much. But nah, they're not like that. It could carry a fair amount of bombs, 1,600 pounds, the same as the Blackburn Baffin. So it would be a decent bomber, I guess. And it could carry an 18-inch torpedo. It had it has the usual 1 303 forward, 1 303 back as defense. And it had a top speed of 230 kilometers per hour and a climb rate of 3.2 meters per second, meaning it is fucking awful. There can be 2 versions, the Mark 1 and the Mark 3, but the only difference between them is that the Mark 3 has a much more powerful engine, meaning a slightly higher top speed, and has a glazed canopy. So yeah, it has a cockpit, an actual cockpit with like canopy and stuff. So the pilot isn't exposed to the elements. And they were used during bombing missions against the Japanese forces over Malaya in 1942. I'm not sure about anything else because I'm too lazy to research. The Fairey Albacore. The Albacore was another carrier-based torpedo bomber that served from 1940. Let me say that right. And 1940 to 1944. He could carry 2,000 pounds of bombs, a max of 400-500 pounds under the wings, and had 1 forward-facing 303 machine gun, and 1 or 2 303 machine guns in a rear mounting for defence. It moved at 259 km per hour and could climb at 3.8 meters or 12.5 feet per second. There is only one version, and that is obviously the Mark 1. Because there's only one version. Obviously, at first the engine was a bit unreliable. It was quickly fixed so that it was reliable. Let me say that again. The engine was quite unreliable. However, it was fixed in a way that it was as reliable as a torpedo. Fucking hell, It was as reliable as a Swordfish's engine. The Albacore saw wide service in the Mediterranean and took part in some ill-fated and some very good battles, including the landings of Sicily. It also took part in attacking the Torpedo, which ended up a failure with 2 lost and many other damaged. It was eventually replaced by the Barracuda and the Swordfish. Swordfish is already again the Barracuda I'll talk about soon, which is in T2. Blackburn Skua. Now this is my favourite bomber of all of them, not more of like the dive bombers and torpedo bombers. My favourite. The Skua is another of Blackburn's glorious inventions, and this time it was a carrier-based monoplane. It's not a biplane; it's a monoplane this time. It was put into service in 1938 and was withdrawn in 1941 but it did other duties until 1945, so it was good, but not good enough, but it was good in some other ways. Sorry. It was actually used in the fighter role as well as a dive bomber, meaning it is very versatile. Well, not very versatile, but it was good enough. It had 4 303 machine guns, 2 in each wing, which were effective at the time, but since like 1940 plus, it didn't do too good against fighters because they're metal. Most of them anyway. If it was wooden, fair enough, but just about all of the German aircraft were metal, so 303s weren't going to do much. And in the case, it could carry a 250 or a 500 pound bomb for dive bombing, or 4 40 pounds or 8 20-pound bombs under each wing, which, you know, you're probably going to think, well, what the fuck, that's not going to do anything against tanks. But this day would have been very, very good against ground forces, like infantry, because, you know, boom. So lighter, blah blah, etc. Go into buildings, you know the drill. It was much faster than the other aircraft, although still underpowered at 362 kilometers per hour, and it could actually climb at 8 meters per second, which isn't too bad, but it's just not good enough, especially when it comes up against BF-19s or lags, because the lags can climb a bit. This thing can't even climb as fast, I don't think. Actually, I think it can. I can't remember the lags climb rate. Oh well, let's continue. There are only 2 versions of this, the Mark 1 and the Mark 2. The only difference being the Mark 2 had much more engine power and a longer... What? Longer what? A longer nose. Not now, fucking hell. Had a longer nose than the Mark 1. So for this, I see best the Mark 1 and 2 being used. Or just the Mark 2. The Skua, though, had a rather decent history. It was a good bomber hunter, being more than capable of shooting down Heinkel 111s, even though it was shot down by one. It also sunk the light cruiser, the Königsberg, in Bergen Harbour when the Germans invaded Norway. It was the ship, not to mention a major ship, the only major ship to be sunk by dive bombing, as well as the only ship first to be sunk by air attack. Sorry, I rephrased that wrong. It was the first ship to be sunk by air attack and the first ship to be sunk by dive bombing. So yeah, Blackburn Skua has that honour. They were also credited with the first British air kill, as a Do-18 seaplane flew close to Britain and was shot down by 3 Skuas. However, despite being an effective bomber hunter against modern fighters such as the Bf-109, it stood little to no chance. So Bf-109, it was a dedicated fighter. You know the drill. Skua. It's a dive bomber. It wasn't designed to go up against fighters. It was designed to kill things with its bombs and stuff. That's tier 1 out of the way. Now, we're on to tier 2 now. The Fairey Barracuda. Barracuda was a carry-based torpedo bomber. It was a monoplane, it wasn't a biplane. It was a torpedo bomber and a dive bomber that saw service from 1940 till the mid-1950s. Remember that, mid-1950s. So this thing was obviously good, and it obviously was, you know, people saw some good things in it. It was capable of carrying one 1,620-pound torpedo, which I suspect is an 18-inch, or 6 250-pound bombs. It didn't have fixed armament, but it did have 2 303 machine guns for defense, such as like in the rear, whatever. It was capable of a speed of 367 km per hour. This is the Mark 2 I'm talking about. Mark 1 had a much less powerful engine, so yeah, it was slower. Sorry. It had a climb rate of 4.2 meters per second, so yeah, same with all bombers really. It's not good at climbing. There are 4 potential models, but 3 I suspect will be the most likely used. Mark 1 is obviously going to be in there. You know, the Mark 2, all it was that it had a more powerful engine, and it had 4 propellers instead of 3, and had an ASV2 radar. I don't know what the radar does, but whatever. Mark 3 is actually a submarine killer. This is what I'm talking about, and may not show up until naval forces, because that might mean subs. So it carried depth charges, which were specifically designed to kill subs, obviously. However, because depth charges and guidance, like it might not, you might not see it. The Mark IV never entered service or production, so that will be seen now. This is the interesting bit. The Mark V had a Griffin engine, and that means the top speed was increased to a maximum of 406 km per hour, and the payload could be increased to 2,000 pounds of bombs. That's quite impressive. So the Mark II could go at 367 km per hour, and the Mark V can go at 406. It's true that might not be good. Sure, that thing's it's gonna be fucked. It's gonna be shit against fighters, but it's 50 km per hour faster. Yeah, that's good for a bomber anyway. Okay, the first time the Barracuda was flown into action was Norway, where they were used in the Mediterranean to help with the landings in Salerno. Then the next year they entered service in the Pacific. They took a major attack on the battleship Torpedo. They scored multiple direct hits with one aircraft lost and disabled the ship. However, the attacks in July and August failed due to the low speed of the aircraft. The aircraft in the Pacific, due to the high temperature of the land, affected the aircraft by as much as 30%, and because of this it was soon replaced by the Avengers. By the mid-1950s, all Barracuda squadrons were replaced by Avengers. It's because Avengers, it was far better, to be honest. Not many torpedo and dive bombers were in service with Britain in or just after World War II. It did have the Fairey Gannet in this list, however I don't think it can be implemented as it entered service in 1953 and was for anti-submarine duties. If you have any other no, too late, I'll read that soon. Blackburn Botha. This was a complete and utter fucking failure of an aircraft, but it was used anyway. It was in service from 1938 to 1944 and could carry a torpedo inside the aircraft or 2,000 pounds of bombs. It had one forward-facing 303 and two in a single dorsal turret for defence. It flew at 401 km per hour. Blackburn Botha was I've got to tell a minute. There can only be one as Mark 1, the next with tug aircraft and whatever. As such as a failure of an aircraft, it was still used. It was quite successful in torpedo and bombing runs, however it had poor visibility and was severely underpowered and regularly crashed. Now before you all bitch and moan about that bit, it was a complete failure, yeah, true. Yeah, but so was the I-185 M71. The M82 was a fucking amazing aircraft, but Durilium, whatever you call it, so they went for the LA5. But the M71 engine, fuck, the plane was crashing left, right and centre. The Yak 9T even. Both of them. Yak 9T. 3 rounds. Engine leakage. Engine broken. Person flying all over the place. Engine breaking down. Wings coming off. Not literally. But yeah. Yak 9K was even worse. If it was going any less than 350, 400 km per hour, the plane would stall and crash and blow up and kill itself instead of the person it was shooting at. So yeah, I see no reason why Gaijin can't put Botha in. Now, as I was saying earlier before, I had a brain fart. Not many torpedo, bombers, blah blah, were in service with, or just after World War II. Now, I had the Fairey Gannet in this, but it was in 1953 and was submarine anti-submarine duties, and yeah, whatever. If you know any other dive or torpedo bombers, just say, and I will include those as I put it in the forums, because I'm going to put this entire list in the forums, right? Basically, I literally read it for word, not literally read it word for word, but 90% of what I just said was word for word, because I'm very bad at improvising and using off the top of my head. So yeah, I will soon be doing actual bombers, yeah, I hope to see you soon. Toodles. Oh, where's the fucking, there's your off one. Toodles. Oh, pop, no